Before we begin, please take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel more than you know, and trust me, you don't want to miss the rest of this story. Studio microphone. My name is Maya Carver, and this is the night my family finally showed me exactly who they were. And the night I decided I wasn't going to play my old role anymore. I was lifting my glass, halfway to my lips, when I heard it. My father's voice, sharp, cold, slicing right through the noise of the table like a knife. Nobody needs your money, or you. A beat of silence. The strange part? Nobody reacted. Nobody even blinked. My sister, Sarah, actually smirked, like she'd been waiting her whole life to co-sign that sentence. My mother kept carving the ham, calm as ever, like my father hadn't just set fire to the air between us. I felt heat crawl up my neck, that familiar sting, but my face didn't move. I kept my smile small, polite, controlled. I'd spent years perfecting that mask. They thought I would do what I always did, shrug. Swallow it. Pretend it didn't hurt, but that night, something was different, soft and hale, because as I sat between the people who had taken and taken and taken from me for years, I realized something they weren't ready to face. Their downfall had already started. A childhood built on silence. Growing up in that house, silence was the toll you paid to belong. My parents never said be quiet, be useful, be grateful. But the message lived in between their words. In the pauses. In the expectations. If Sarah forgot her homework, I ran it to her school. If Dad needed someone to stay home with Grandma, I canceled my plans. If Sarah's bills got out of control, again, somehow they ended up in my hands every single time. The family called it Maya's so reliable. But reliable is just a polite word for useful. Useful is one step away from invisible. The pretty picture everyone else saw on the outside. We looked like one of those picture-perfect American families, matching holiday sweaters, my mom's sweet potato casserole right in the center of the table, big, loud group photos at Thanksgiving. But that wasn't safety. That was presentation. A mask painted in warm colors, because inside that house, love had strings attached. And the strings were all tied to me. The one person who saw meth, only person who ever treated me like a human being, not a tool, was Grandma. Her tiny kitchen always smelled like peppermint tea and old books. She'd take my hands in hers and whisper, "You don't have to save the whole world, honey." Back then, I didn't know she meant my world, the world where love came with a price tag. When she passed, I kept her kitchen key like it was a lifeline. Because it was back to the table. So at that dinner, sitting in the same chair I'd grown up in, between the same faces that had rewritten me into something convenient, the fixer, the payer, the quiet one. All those years snapped into perfect clarity. Dad still didn't look at me when he said it. Mom kept slicing like she was on autopilot. Sarah rolled her wine in her glass, proud of herself, and instead of breaking me, their words clicked something into place. A door shutting. A lock turning. A truth revealed. That house had never been mine. Not really, and suddenly, their silence didn't feel like power. It felt like an ending, and a beginning. The dinner kept going, plates scraping, glasses clinking, jokes floating around the table, but inside me, everything slowed down. Like time had stepped off the train. I looked at them the way you look at strangers. Curious, detached, wondering how you ever believed you belonged to them in the first place. Sarah laughed under her breath and said, "You take things too seriously, Maya. Nobody needs you doing all that stuff." Not realizing she'd said the quiet part out loud, Mom chimed in next, "You don't even have your own family to worry about. We don't want you burning yourself out for nothing." That word hit harder than I expected. Nothing. Everything I'd built, my job, my independence, my own life, reduced to nothing because it didn't serve them. Dad muttered, "Let's not make this dramatic. You take things too personally. Years of gaslighting, wrapped in fake politeness. I looked at the empty chair where Grandma used to sit, and suddenly her absence felt like a warning I hadn't listened to soon enough. Sarah leaned forward, irritated. Come on, Maya. Say something. But I couldn't trust my voice. Not because it would crack, but because the anger was too clear. Too sharp. Too ready, and anger like that doesn't want to be spoken. It wants to be acted on. I folded my napkin slowly, neatly, and placed it by my plate. A simple movement. But it shifted the entire room. Sarah's confidence faltered. Mom paused mid-slice. Dad's eyes narrowed. I stood calm, steady, the surface of a frozen lake. I hear you, I said quietly. Dad waved his hand. Good. Then we're done. But he didn't understand. That was the moment I moved on, not from the conversation, but from them. I didn't storm out. I didn't yell. I didn't slam a single door. I just walked toward the hallway, slow, deliberate, like every step was peeling away one old version of me. The version they depended on. The version they drained. My coat felt heavier than usual when I picked it up, like it already knew what I was about to do. I could feel their eyes following me, confused, irritated, suspicious, but none of them said a word, not at first. Then Sarah's voice burst out behind me. Maya, seriously? That's it? You're just walking away? I didn't turn around. I didn't look back at her. I just said, I hear you. All of you. My voice was so calm it scared me a little. Dad scoffed. Drama. Pure drama. Mom muttered something under her breath about me always taking things too far, but none of it stopped me. It couldn't. Something inside me had already snapped into place, stepped outside into the cold night air, letting the door click softly behind me, and the silence hit like a rush of oxygen. For the first time in my life, stepping away from them didn't feel wrong. It felt right. I walked toward my car, each step echoing like I was moving through a long hallway of memories. Memories I'd never questioned until now, running to Sarah's school with forgotten homework. Pulling out my wallet when Dad's tone sharpened. Giving up my weekends because Mom needed help. Being the family safety net, patching holes they didn't even bother to hide. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from this strange, bright clarity that settled deep in my chest. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, forehead resting lightly against the steering wheel, breathing slowly. This is it, I whispered. And somehow, the quiet felt louder than anything inside that house ever had. When I finally drove home, my little apartment felt unfamiliar, like I was seeing it for the first time. The lamp by the sofa cast a warm glow across the living room. Everything was neat. Everything was mine. Everything was peaceful, but the peace stung, because for the first time, I realized how rarely I'd allowed myself to feel it. I sat down at my dining table, opened my laptop, and stared at the blank screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard, hesitant, the way someone reaches toward a door they're not sure they're allowed to open, but then the words came. Not the emotional kind, the factual kind, the kind you use when you're finally done pretending. Opened a new folder and labeled it Family Payments. Seeing the name written out like that made my stomach twist. It looked so cold. So legal. So final, but the truth inside it wasn't new. Just organized. I went through years of receipts, late-night transfers, emergency payments, bills Sarah had forgotten, charges Mom had quietly pushed onto my account, little guilt messages from Dad wrapped in phrases like, "You're the responsible one. We just need a little help. You know we'd do the same for you." Except they wouldn't. They never had. The pattern formed itself like a timeline, clean, brutal, undeniable. For years I'd told myself speaking up would make me cruel. But staying silent had made me disposable. My mouse hovered over the compose button for a long moment, my finger hovering but not clicking. My pulse thudded in my ears, then a memory surfaced, my friend Jen, months ago, telling me, if you ever get tired of being their safety net, call my lawyer. I mean it. Back then I laughed it off, because back then, I still believed being needed meant I was loved. Now I knew better, and my hands shook a little as I typed the lawyer's email address. I attached every screenshot, every receipt, every message I'd collected. It looked like evidence, because it was. I breathed out slowly, a long, shaking breath, and clicked send. The moment it left my inbox, something inside me settled. Like a stone finally sinking to the bottom of a lake. Later that night, I got the lawyer's reply, short, direct, almost clinical. I've reviewed what you sent. This is not simple family help. This is a pattern of financial exploitation. If you're ready, we can proceed. Ready, I stared at the word. It felt heavy. Final. True images flashed through my mind, my father's bored face. My mother slicing ham like I didn't exist. Sarah swirling her wine, proud of herself. That line, nobody needs your money or you. I opened a new email. Typed one sentence, I'm ready. And hit send. The next morning felt different. The world didn't look new, but I did. For the first time in years, I woke up without checking my phone to make sure no one needed something from me. No panicked texts from Sarah. No guilt from Mom. No passive-aggressive sighs from Dad, just silence, and somehow the quiet wasn't painful anymore. It was possibility. Over the next days, the lawyer and I met in his small office downtown. He listened carefully while I explained everything, from the first borrowed payment to the night they told me nobody needed me. He asked for dates, numbers, quotes, and every answer I gave made something inside me loosen, like a knot untying one thread at a time. By the time we filed the fraud report, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like release. There was no thunder. No dramatic music. Just a simple confirmation email, and suddenly, everything was in motion. Everything they thought I'd never dare to do, and I didn't feel scared. I felt steady, almost calm. The family had no idea what was coming. But the shift had already begun, and I wasn't going back. The investigation didn't explode into my life all at once. It crept in quietly, like a tide pulling back before a storm. The first ripple came only 3 days after that dinner. Sarah texted me, not a hi, not a how are you, not even an apology. Just, you're acting weird. Is this about dinner? Mom didn't mean it. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then locked my phone and set it face down. I wasn't going to explain myself. Not anymore. A few hours later, another text came. Then another. Each one more impatient than the last. You can't seriously still be mad. Stop being dramatic. Mom is crying. Answer. But I stayed silent, and it must have scared her, because silence from me was something they had never experienced before. Not really. Then the calls started. Mom's ringtone, the one I never changed because the guilt in her voice always made me pick up, echoed through my apartment. Once. Twice. 5 times, then Dad, then Sarah again. Voicemails stacked up like a pile of unopened mail. We're worried about you. You know family talks like this. You shouldn't take everything so personally. You need to call us back. In one voicemail, I heard Sarah in the background complaining loudly, my card keeps getting declined. What the hell, Mom? I let the message play to the end, then listened to the silence that followed, and deleted it. A week later, my lawyer called. His voice was steady, professional, almost too calm for the weight of what he was saying. The Financial Crimes Unit has officially opened an investigation. They'll need to speak with you again, and with them. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just let the words settle, like dust after a collapse. They'll talk to my family? I finally asked. Yes, he said. You've carried this alone for years. It's theirs to carry now. That sentence hit deep. Deep in the place where I'd been holding tension for decades. Didn't realize I'd been gripping the phone so tightly until I relaxed my hand and felt the ache in my palm. The next morning, something inside me shifted again, not sharply, but slowly, like ice melting. I woke up, stretched, made coffee, and realized I wasn't afraid of what was coming. Not even a little. Days went by, and my family's messages only got stranger. Sarah tried guilt first. Then anger. Then sarcasm. Then fake sweetness. Mom tried tears over voicemail. Dad tried silence, his favorite weapon, which suddenly had no power anymore. Nothing worked then. One evening, my lawyer sent me a message. They're scheduling the interviews. It will happen very soon. I felt that message in my chest, a rush of nerves, mixed with something cleaner, something stronger, something like relief. The day the investigators were supposed to meet with my family, I woke up early. I showered. I put on clean clothes. I didn't have to be there, my lawyer said, but I wanted to be near, not inside that house. I wasn't stepping into that place unless I had to, but close enough to see the moment everything shifted. As I drove down the familiar street, the winter sky hung heavy and gray. The kind of sky that makes everything feel slower, quieter, like the world is holding its breath. Their house looked exactly the same. Same wreath on the door. Same porch light that flickered. Same cracks along the walkway, but something in the air felt different. Almost electric. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a moment, letting the cold seep through the windows. I could see through the dining room window, the table set, my father in his usual chair, my mother arranging napkins. Sarah scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. Seth leaning back, smug, relaxed, comfortable, the same scene I'd grown up sitting inside, only this time, I wasn't part of it. I took a slow breath, opened my door, and walked toward the house. My footsteps sounded louder than they should have. Maybe because for the first time, I wasn't walking as the person they expected me to be. I knocked once on the door. A soft knock, but it echoed inside the house. Mom opened it, eyes wide, startled. Maya, you didn't tell us you were coming. I know. My voice was calm. Almost too calm. I stepped inside. The warmth of the house hit me first, that thick family warmth that used to comfort me and now made my skin crawl. Dad looked irritated. Sarah didn't even look up. Seth glanced at me with that bored, dismissive expression he always wore. I took off my coat slowly, feeling their eyes on me, feeling the tension twist through the room. Thought you didn't need me, I said softly. Mom flinched slightly, her lips pressing tight. Don't start, she whispered harshly. Sarah rolled her eyes. Oh my God, you are still on that? Seriously? I walked toward the table, not to sit, but to set my bag down on my old chair. Dad cleared his throat. Look, he said, about what was said last time. Let's not make this a thing. We were talking. That's all. Mom crossed her arms. I was just being honest. Right, I said quietly. That's one word for it. Seth scoffed. We said we don't need your money. Take the hint. I looked at him, then at Sarah, then at the whole table. My voice came out steady, almost soft. It's funny, I said. Some people seem very interested in where my money went. And right at that moment, before anyone could ask what I meant, there was a knock, not a gentle knock. A hard, firm, professional knock. 3 quick hits that rattled the front door. Everyone froze. Every breath in the room paused. Every face stiffened. Dad frowned. Who is that? I swallowed once. Quietly, you should get that. He stood slowly, walked to the door, opened it, and stopped dead. A man's voice carried into the room. Good evening, sir. Financial Crimes Unit. We're here for Sarah and Seth Miller, and Thomas and Elaine Carver. The air in the house cracked open. Mom stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. There must be some mistake. 2 investigators stepped inside, badges visible. There is no mistake, one of them said. We're here regarding an ongoing investigation into financial fraud and exploitation. Sarah shot to her feet, face draining of color. Seth shifted back like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. Dad stuttered something no one could understand, and for the first time in my entire life, they all looked genuinely afraid. Sarah's voice broke as she hissed at me, Maya, what did you do? I didn't step forward. I didn't raise my voice, I just looked right at her and said quietly, I finally stayed silent. And then I did what I should have done years ago. The room didn't feel like my childhood home anymore. It felt smaller, tighter, like the walls finally stopped protecting the people who hid behind them for so long. The investigators stepped inside with quiet authority, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, professional, and impossible to ignore. Mom's voice trembled first. We didn't do anything wrong. Why would you come here? Why? One of the investigators held up a hand gently. We're here to speak with all of you about the financial activities tied to Maya Carver. This is a routine part of the investigation. Routine. The word sliced through the tension, because nothing about this moment felt routine to them. Sarah sank back into her chair like her legs gave out. Seth kept looking from the investigators to me, like he couldn't believe this was happening. Dad stood stiffly, jaw clenched so tight the muscles twitched, stayed near the wall, not out of fear, but out of choice. I wasn't part of the chaos anymore. One of the investigators turned toward me, Miss Carver, thank you for being here. You're not required to stay, but you're welcome to. I nodded politely. I'll stay. Mom spun toward me, her voice cracking. Maya, please, tell them this is a mistake. Her hands shook. Really shook. I'd never seen that before, and for a moment, a tiny moment, the part of me that always tried to fix things tried to wake up, but I didn't let it. Instead, I spoke softly, calmly, like someone who finally understood her own strength. You told me you didn't need my money anymore, I said. You insisted. Loudly. Sarah's head snapped up. That was just a stupid thing people say. You know I didn't mean that. The investigator took notes quietly. Seth groaned and buried his face in his hands. Dad rubbed his forehead. Let's all just calm down. We're family. We can talk this through without outsiders. One investigator replied gently but firmly, Sir, this is now a legal matter. It isn't optional. Dad's expression cracked, the first real break in his armor I'd ever seen. The investigators separated us. Standard procedure, they said. Sarah and Seth were asked to gather documents, bank statements, transfers, anything tied to my finances. Their panic grew with every question. Mom whispered my name over and over, like she was calling a child lost in a crowd. Maya, honey, please, they're scaring me. I took a breath. A long, slow one, Mom, I said gently. You weren't scared when you told me you didn't need me. Or my help. Or my support. She flinched like the words physically hit her. I didn't mean it, she whispered. I know, I said. But you said it. And I believed you. The investigators moved smoothly, respectfully, gathering what they needed. Their professionalism made the moment feel strangely calm, like order had finally stepped into a house that had been ruled by chaos for years. After nearly an hour, one investigator approached me. We have what we need for now, he said. Thank you for cooperating. we'll follow up soon, but you've done the right thing. The right thing, the words felt warm. Warm in a way I hadn't felt in a long, long time. He handed me a card, nodded, and walked out. The others followed, then the house fell into silence. A heavy silence, a fragile silence, the kind that makes everyone aware something has changed forever. Sarah looked at me with red, tear-stained eyes. What happens now? She whispered, shrugged softly. That isn't my job anymore. Seth shook his head at the floor. This is a nightmare. Mom grabbed my arm suddenly, desperate, clinging. Maya, please, you can fix this. You always fix everything. Please. I stepped back for the first time in my life. I stepped back. I can't fix it, I said. And I won't. Dad finally spoke, voice low. So you're just leaving us to deal with this? I met his eyes. And my voice, calm, steady, filled the room. You all told me you don't need me. The truth hung in the air, simple. Undeniable. Freeing. I picked up my coat and my bag. My hands didn't shake. At the doorway, I paused, not to reconsider, but to say the one thing they never let me say. I love you, I said quietly. But I'm choosing myself now. Mom covered her mouth. Sarah's breath hitched. Dad's eyes dropped to the floor. Seth didn't move at all, and I walked out. The cold air hit my face like a fresh start. A clean page. A new chapter. I got into my car, exhaled, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt light. The weight I had carried, silently, patiently, endlessly, was finally gone, not because they apologized. Not because they understood. Not because anything was magically fixed, but because I finally let go, drove away slowly, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror, and the world ahead of me opening wider with every mile, and somewhere between that house and the highway, a smile found its way onto my face, a real one, kind that feels like the beginning of a better story, a story that finally belongs to me.